Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I am your host, Brian Scott. Today we are going to read some more from Three Magic Words by US Andersen. This has been an amazing book, and so far we have read 9 chapters from this book on the podcast. We've talked about the lock, illusion, mind, form, intuition, faith, attraction, love. The last episode was on success. Today we will talk about health and the secret to great health. US Andersen was an amazing writer. We have covered him on several episodes. One of my favorites is The Secret Power of the Pyramids, an amazing first-person account of US Andersen going throughout the United States, finding these amazing energy vortexes. And I've read that on the channel as well. But today we talk about health and the different sort of dysfunctions in your health and how that's actually being expressed mentally. I know you've heard many different authors and YouTube videos on health and the mind, but this is quite different. US Andersen had a different way of teaching things that is powerful and fundamental and always good. US Andersen on the secret to great health. By perceiving thy inner perfection, thou attaineth a vigorous health, for thy body is but a projection of thy view of the indwelling self. The origin of disease. Health and well-being are the natural states of every form of life, for all things are rooted in universal subconscious mind, which is perfect. Every living thing is but an idea held in universal mind, made manifest in space and time, gifted with consciousness which seeks ever to know more about itself. There's only one intelligence, one mind in all creation, and all things are made from it. According as each thing realizes the perfection in which it is rooted, it attains to perfection itself. Thus, physical health proceeds from mental peace, and disease and corruption proceed from mental confusion. Disease is a product of the confusion attendant upon growing self-consciousness. So it is that man, the most intelligent of all forms of life, falls constant prey to disease and illness, while the lower forms of life exist in physical perfection, unburdened by mental confusion. The lower we go on the scale of life, the scarcer become the evidence of disease, until at last we are forced to the conclusion that disease is a product of mental development, most certainly a product of evolving consciousness. Evolving consciousness comes with an increasing number of conflicts, which project themselves into universal mind, which manifest them physically in the form of disease and corruption of the body. Man, who has come the full scale of self-consciousness but has not yet evolved the greater consciousness of immortal self, sees himself as an insignificant dot in a gigantic universe where he has not ordered his existence and cannot stay his death. His highly developed little ego cuts him off from the roots of his being, and he knows fear and futility and hate and bitterness, all of which set up conflicts between his emotions and his mind. These project into universal intelligence, cast his concept of himself from perfection, and return to him as gallstones, kidney stones, ulcers, high blood pressure, hardening of the arteries, cancer, leprosy, deafness, and so on ad infinitum. Psychology and psychiatry have unmasked this chain of cause and effect so clearly that medical science devised to treat disease as a physical thing only now freely admits that 80% of all disease is of a mental origin. It will not be much longer before this admission is enlarged to 100%, where it should be. A truth cannot be partly right, and it is obvious that all things have their origin in something greater than the physical world around us. The bacterial concept of disease is satisfactory for the chain of effects that exists on the physical plane. But why do such bacteria enter one body and not another? And why are they harmless in some bodies and yet deadly in others? Indeed, why do they exist at all? Any man who considers the origin of anything must come at last to the invisible but very apparent intelligence from which all things have sprung and concede it to be the first cause, since this intelligence would scarcely be intelligent at all if its normal procedure were to attack itself, such as in microbes attacking the human body, then it must be conceded that it is creating disease in response to something. That something is a conception formed by the conscious mind and projected into universal subconscious mind, whence it manifests in the physical world. The power that heals. It is a rare person who consciously desires to be sick, though it is certainly true that a few unhappy people have so completely cut themselves off from the spiritual unity of life that nothing further appeals to them than this form of slow suicide. The vast majority of people fall prey to disease through negative thinking habits and through coping mechanisms established in answer to buried pain remembrances or prompters. A person who is chronically ill has a subconscious desire to be sick, though to confront him with such a thesis would be to inspire the most vehement denial. And even those of us who are sick only occasionally become so because it is a way of coping with the situation that confronts us. Since we do not know ourselves or even who we are, we do not understand the dynamically co-creative energy in which we live, nor do we understand our subconscious desires, nor do we understand that reach of these desires is delivered to us in reality. So it is that all disease, all warping of the body from its natural physical perfection comes because a person holds subconscious feelings of hate, bitterness, resentment, envy, jealousy, greed, self-pity, maliciousness, or any number of countless abortions that corrupt the natural expression of the universe, love. If a man does not love, he hates, or projects one of the hate's deformed brothers, for love is the power of universal mind and flows through each person who lives, whether he uses it positively or negatively. If he uses it negatively, as in hate, it is a corrupting power aimed at evil, and it weakens and decays and withers the body. Instead of the power for life, it becomes the power for death. Once again, we see that the commands of the universe are love or suffer, love or die. Love is the power that heals. Love banishes confusion, roots out the prompters, brings peace of mind, bans the door to negative thinking, reveals the indwelling perfection of the human soul, not the love of man for woman or one person for another, but the love of man for God and the love of God for man, which is complete in man when he knows his love for God. Body is rooted in spirit. Psychiatry is now only a skip and a jump away from being able to put its finger on the various negative emotions that bring on specific diseases. The day is not too far distant when medical textbooks shall list after hate, bitterness, frustration, repression, envy, and loneliness their resultant physical debilities, and mankind will guard its emotions with the same care it now bestows on its physical well-being, pills and potions being replaced by healthy habits of thought. Writes Edward Carpenter, every organ and center of the body is the seat of some great emotion, which in its proper activity and due proportion is truly divine. Body is rooted in pure spirit, in universal subconscious mind, which is perfect. Body may be cast from perfection only by concepts held in conscious mind, which project into the subconscious and are reported as physical ailments. We do not cause our hearts to beat, nor do we direct the flow of blood to our various organs, nor the acids of the stomach to perform the miracle of digestion, nor the intestines and the kidneys to go about the process of elimination of waste matter. The dynamic source from which our bodies have sprung has inculcated in them these reflexive actions. The functions of a body represent the movement and concept of intelligence, and when we get our fears and negative desires out of the way, our bodies function perfectly. But every concept we hold of lack, limitation, acquisitiveness, repression, and despair performs its restricting influence on our bodies so that the blood does not circulate freely, the digestion does not assimilate properly, elimination is poor, congestion develops, strange growths appear and represent the distortion of our thinking. Thus our self-awareness, which its attendant doubts and fears and frustrations, limits the conditions of our health and our lives. We must let go our little egos, take unto ourselves the God consciousness which is our true being. Then body becomes perfect, for we have become one with that which is perfect itself. Body is only a manifestation of God's knowledge of himself. It is an idea held in universal subconscious mind, an evolving idea which constantly changes all about us. We see the cycles of life's expression. Seed, bud, bloom, decay, the giving way to new life. Form must change as knowledge and ideation advances. Thus, body is that which changes, that which manifests idea form within the formless, a complete and perfect expression of an idea held in universal subconscious mind, destined to express the idea and give way to a more perfect idea. Birth and death, infancy, youth, middle age, old age, all are absolute essentials in the progress of evolution, by which God seeks to know himself, and death will not be stayed until the journey is complete, for to stop death would be to stop the progress of evolution. Spirit is perfect. There is no such thing as an imperfect body, for body is always a perfect manifestation of an idea. There are only imperfect ideas. They are imperfect because they are in error, and they may be changed by simply accepting the idea of change. A man who has stifled the divinity in the belief that physical things are first causes is incapable of healing himself until he has changed his belief. If his joints are stiff and his digestion poor, he spends a good portion of each day acknowledging the fact that his joints are stiff and his digestion poor, and he himself is thrusting his body into these very conditions by his concept. He is deluded into believing that he thinks these things because he has stiff joints and poor digestion, and cannot see that he has stiff joints and poor digestion because he thinks them. Place him under deep hypnosis and assure him that he can get about like an athlete and has the digestion of a lumberjack, and after he is awakened, his afflictions will have flown. Alas, they will not be gone permanently, for patterns of negative thinking are his still and will shortly bring back his poor condition, but the marvelous illustration will not be denied. The intelligence that inhabits a man's body will become anything that is projected into it. It will make a healthy body if health is projected, and it will make a sickly body if limitation or hate or bitterness is projected. Thus, a healthy body is always a result of a healthy mind, and a sickly body is always the result of a blocked and unhappy mind. If we would heal our bodies, we must first heal our minds with love, with the recognition of our true being, with meditation at the center of consciousness. Let go of ego. Worry and tension, guilt and hostility, resentment and vanity lay the foundations for all of our physical afflictions. They spring like growths from our overdeveloped little egos, which are forever being hurt and frustrated in a world which we set out to beat instead of cooperate with. Victory seems to be all we can think of. We have to outshine somebody, get the better of someone, make more money, be better looking, wear better clothes. How transient such victories are, and how unrewarding. Find a champion and you will see behind him the shadow of the man who will replace him. There is no victory for the hounded little ego, for it is nothing by itself and it cannot see the larger dimension of the being in which it is rooted. So it is hurt, and sad, and lonely, and frustrated, and is forever turning upon itself and rending itself, as if by the self-affliction of pain it confirms the poor opinion it has of life. Turn to the gigantic self that dwells within, and you will cease to be concerned with the pains of your ego, which will immerse itself in an untroubled sea and bother you no more. Some of your hurts you have cured, and the sharpest you still have survived, but what torments of grief you endured for evils which never arrived. Emerson. The entire miracle of existence and creation lies at our fingertips, yet most of us fill the pathways of our lives with wails of fear for what lies around the corner. We bemoan past mistakes or dwell forever on the saddest words of tongue or pen. It might have been. Each day is a new birth, unlimited with miraculous possibilities for each man who lives. No matter what your age, situation, clime, or time, you need only awaken to know with Khalil Gibran that which sings and contemplates in you is still dwelling within the bounds of that first moment which scattered the stars into space. Find a motivating purpose. Idea is a complete thing. Aimed at a purpose, and the body made manifest from such an idea is also a complete thing. Aimed at a purpose, it is this purpose which holds together the many interrelated functions of the body, and when purpose disappears from our lives, our bodies disintegrate, even as the idea which manifested them is disintegrating. We often are witness to the vigorous businessman who at a mature age decides to retire to a life of leisure, Seldom is he embarked many months upon this life before all sorts of symptoms of bad health begin to overtake him. A motivating purpose is absolutely essential to good health, for the organs and functions of the body respond to the goal set in mind. When the goal is removed, sluggishness and irresponsibility overtake the body, and it decays and breaks down. No body can be whole and vigorous unless the mind that inhabits it is whole and vigorous, for the ideas we hold in mind are made visible through our bodies and the circumstances that surround us. The first step to health is always the creation of interest and enthusiasm on the plane of mind. Aspiring and dynamic thoughts make vigorous bodies, and we must think health in order to be healthy. Exercise is a case in point. Our physical culturists would have us believe that running, bending, squatting, lifting, and flailing the arms will bring health, and they point with pardonable pride to various outstanding physical specimens as examples of what comes from exercise. But once again, we are witness to materialists who point to results and never causes, for the well-conditioned body is not a direct result of exercise, but only a secondary result. True cause exists in the mind, as always, and a body is conditioned because of mental purpose, which causes purposeful exercise, which results in a vigorous body. Exercise and health. Some of the healthiest people of our age get little more exercise than walking from bed to dinner table, and many of our shortest-lived people are our athletes. It becomes increasingly obvious that exercise alone produces neither health nor longevity. Yet the evidence is all about us that men of great purpose live to ripe old ages, so that it becomes an inescapable fact that interest and desire and aspiration are mental conditions that are always found in those who are healthy and vigorous. Our materialists may argue that such people have interest and desire and aspiration because they are healthy, but many a healthy man has been led into illness when his interest and joy in life waned, and many a sick man has been led back to vigor and health simply through developing consuming interest and purpose. All things proceed from mind, which is always first cause. Physical vigor is the result of vigorous thoughts, and physical weakness is the result of confusion. Therefore, a man who accepts the perfection and power of the indwelling self will find such perfection and power mirrored in his body. Health comes from within and never from outside. By all means, take exercise if it is fun, but there is no point in taking it if it is distasteful. Exercise merely conditions the body for more exercise. If you lift a 100-pound weight 10 times every day, eventually you'll be able to lift it 20 times every day. But the lifting of the weight will not prevent your arteries from hardening, your nerves from fraying, or your digestion from going awry. A man may as simply attain health through wielding a pencil with the purpose in mind of completing a book as he may through running the measured mile each day, in fact more easily, if it gives him more pleasure to write the book than it does to run the mile. Our bodies are always perfect instruments of our thoughts, and perfect health may be ours whether we are athletes, professors, lumberjacks, clerks, or housewives. If our thinking is clear with purpose and our hearts are free to love, exercise makes not the slightest difference. Physical strength and endurance may be increased through exercise, but lasting health is as much a prerogative of the sedentary life as the athletic life. Pain is a signpost. The spiritual unrest of the world is evidenced by increasing orgies of overeating, overdrinking, overworking, overplaying, and undersleeping. We undertake such a chain of neurotic activity as an escape from the gnawing doubts and fears and frustrations that lay at the crux of our subconscious. Abuses of the body are always results of confusions in mind, so that a subconscious sense of insecurity may lead a person into eating far too much, or a sense of being unloved may turn a person to alcohol. We sometimes play too hard, seeking to forget the issues of life and death by burying our heads in the sand like ostriches. We often work too hard, seeking to amass a mountain of material gain to provide for our security, but it stays not death, and we cannot take it with us when the transition comes. We seek constantly for the pleasures of the senses, and by surfeiting ourselves, we dull the mystical creativeness of our true being. And when our bodies grow old and physical sensation wanes, the pygmy of our undeveloped soul plagues us with gnawing doubts and uncertainties. Truly, we cannot be whole men, either spiritually or physically, until we have recognized that the roots of our being rest in eternity. We learn slowly, mostly by pain, and each of our gains in knowledge and awareness is hard won. Pain is that which visits us when we are in error, and through suffering we are turned back to the path of truth. Writes Khalil Gibran, much of your pain is self-chosen. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility. Until we have learned the great lesson that pain is merely a signpost indicating that we have wandered off the track of truth, we shall continue to fight it and struggle with it, to lend reality to it, and thus to bring more of it into our experience. But once we have come far enough to realize that all pain, physical, mental, and emotional, proceeds from errors in thinking, we are well on the way to filling our lives with vigor, abundance, and joy, and have come a great step toward unity of consciousness with universal subconscious mind. The ordinary man learns by his own mistakes. The wise man learns by the mistakes of others. Overindulgence in physical things marks an imbalance of the emotions. Fear, hate, and insecurity rest in the subconscious of every person who flees his demon down the murky roads of alcoholism, overeating, or frenetic searches for pleasure and acquisition. Moderation attends all things to him who has been introduced to the center of consciousness. No violent emotions restrict his soul, for he is secure in the consciousness of God. No uncertainties gnaw at the foundations of his being, for they rest in eternity. Confusion has no place in his mind because he sees the goal of all life, becomes one with it, takes it unto himself as his own purpose. Should disease or illness become manifest in his body, he turns his gaze within to the perfection and wonder of his true being, and his body is made whole. And since he kept his mind on one sole aim, nor ever touched fierce wine, nor tasted flesh, nor owned a sensual wish, to him the wall that sonders ghosts and shadow-casting men became a crystal, and he saw them throw it, and heard their voices talk behind the wall, and learned their elemental secrets, powers, and forces. Alfred Tennyson. Disease is never incurable. An infinite law is at work in the universe. It is the law of ideas becoming things. Since this law is the movement of universal mind, it has absolutely no limitation. Therefore, there is no such thing as an incurable disease. A law must work all the time in order to be a law, and the law that governs the intelligence in which we are rooted is the foundation of all things. Disease itself springs from an idea impregnated upon universal mind, and will be banished when the idea is banished. Whatever disease science has been unable to find a cure is not incurable. Something causes it that something may be discovered and removed. Both medical science and psychiatry are learning that the root of all things exists in mind, springs from idea, and idea can be changed. Since there is no limit to idea and to the inexhaustible power of universal subconscious mind, there absolutely cannot be any such thing as an incurable disease. We must realize that the universe always turns out to be exactly what we think it to be, even as do our bodies. As we reach higher levels of consciousness, we take unto ourselves more perfect ideas, casting off the shackles of limitation, becoming aware that all things are possible. The moment we say something is impossible, we make it impossible for God to manifest it through us, and another man with a greater vision and a greater faith will bring it forth, for he will allow God to work through him. None of us has the right to say a thing is impossible unless he is foolish enough to place limitations on God. Perfect Spirit is within us, willing to manifest perfect health for us, if we but call upon it with faith. All disease may be healed by mental and spiritual treatment, by expanding consciousness to encompass universal self. Mental healing. Each person who suffers from ill health has usually fallen victim to a specific ailment. This specific ailment is the result of some obstruction in mind, some false idea, some erroneous conception. When we heal the body by mental and spiritual treatment, we do not treat the body, we treat the mind. This is very important. One cannot get rid of result without first getting rid of cause. Cause is always in mind. Bodily ailments are the result. A lifetime of study would be unlikely to reveal the specific mental disturbances that cause each disease. But no table of mental and emotional disturbances with resultant physical debilities is needed to successfully conduct mental healing. All things spring from a perfect source. We need only contact this source and allow it to manifest its perfection through our bodies. Hence, the way to healing of all disease is to recognize your spiritual perfection. There is nothing in universal subconscious mind that desires our bodies to be warped away from the purposeful functioning for which they were intended. It is our conception of ourselves that visits disease upon us. And when we have conceived ourselves to be spiritually perfect, we become physically perfect. The real you is not your body. Your body is but an infinitesimal extension in time and space. The real you is mental and spiritual, free of the confines of space and time, limitless in power and the capacity to understand and create. When you have recognized your true spiritual self, you have become identified with immortal self, and disease cannot exist in your body, for there is no limitation in universal subconscious mind. Treating for health. Therefore, all disease may be treated as one disease, which is not disease at all, but simply limited thinking, errors projected into universal subconscious mind. We treat disease by refusing to accept it as having any true existence, by affirming the spiritual perfection in which we are rooted. Perfect love casteth out fear, and perfect faith casts out physical imperfection. Yet, rare is the man who has perfect love or perfect understanding or even perfect faith. We are all neophytes on the great adventure of expanding consciousness, and by the very nature of this adventure, we are unable to go beyond our understanding. We stand at the crossroads, peering into the infinite reaches of space and time, exclaiming yet over one grain of sand on the gigantic beach of existence. But the veil is rent, and light pours through with great revelation that mind and spirit are immortal and infinite and always first cause of everything. If eons of time are yet to elapse before man completes his journey to a oneness with God, what does it matter? We are all a part of one mind and truly exist in a place where space and time are nothing. We may call upon universal subconscious mind with the understanding that now is in us, and the great Creator will respond by creating for us the image of our understanding. If we can find it in ourselves to accept spiritual perfection, universal mind will manifest this perfection in our bodies. Thus, the basis of spiritual and mental healing is affirmation. We deny nothing, waste not time dwelling on that which we do not desire. Our moments of consciousness are directed inward, at our spiritual selves, and are aimed at perceiving the perfection that gives us consciousness. What we see is returned to us, awareness of the center of consciousness. Perception of the kingdom of heaven brings health. We cannot go beyond understanding. The objection that is usually raised against mental healing is that nobody seems able to set a broken bone mentally, so the whole aspect of mental healing is in error. It is not impossible mentally to set a broken bone. The fact that it has not been done simply means that we have not yet arrived at a sufficient spiritual understanding. Lacking the understanding we call a surgeon, which is as it should be. Neither do we have enough understanding to heal a ruptured appendix or dissolve a critical queue of cancer, so again we call upon the surgeon. Yet these things and all others of the so-called incurable diseases are possible of mental healing, and the day will arrive when evolution will have brought man's consciousness and understanding to the point where disease will be banished from the face of the earth. Another argument often used against mental healing is advanced by the school of materialists, who see life as species preying on species and survival of the fittest. Their theory is that all organisms by their very natures must feed upon each other, that microbes must feed upon the human body. Thus life is disease itself. This hopeless outlook on the miracle of creation keeps God embedded in the slime of the amoeba, sees nothing but a screaming insanity in life, and projects a tooth and fang existence for the most enlightened of men. Evolution is the process of individualized consciousness expanding in search of God. The first result of individualized existence is the struggle to maintain life, with its natural outcome of survival of the fittest. The second result is consciousness of self, the identification of oneself with another, and the birth of love and cooperation as opposed to competition and preying on the weaker. The third result is the expansion of the consciousness of self to encompass the consciousness of universal subconscious mind, and it is this step that mankind is preparing to take now. Once it is fully taken, men will see through the illusions of space and time and perceive that material things are but tiny extensions of a far greater reality that has its roots in infinity. Such a consciousness orders the universe, for the universe turns out to be exactly what it perceives. Microbes which have their roots in universal mind may be banished by banishing the conception. Perceiving the truth. Disease is a negative thought force, is false, and is therefore an illusion of the mind. In mental healing, we simply separate false thoughts from the true, consciously and by allowing our faith and affirmation to sink down into the subconscious. We admit physical vigor and health into our lives. The principle of existence is the principle of thoughts becoming things. Since this is a law, we do not argue or struggle with it. Some well-meaning friend may ask you why you don't try walking upon the water since you are so all-fired convinced of this mind stuff. All you can do is assure him that it is towards such a goal that you aspire, for we either walk on the water or drown in it. We either master life or defeat ourselves. Rely on the law. Mental treatment entails no personal responsibility other than for the idea and its affirmation. All else depends upon the principle of creation that underlies the universe, and this principle never fails. When you affirm your spiritual perfection, you are setting universal law in motion, which accepts your conception and the power of your affirmation and manifests it in the physical world. There is nothing superstitious or occult about this. The law we are dealing with is infallible. It is true reality beside which all else pales to nothingness. Since disease is caused by a mental condition before it can be healed, the mental condition must be surrendered. A man must first surrender himself to God, to universal subconscious mind. He must let go, give up the struggle, trust in the invisible roots of his being, so that God consciousness may engulf him and make him whole. You cannot successfully treat yourself or another person until you are willing to surrender your doubts and fears and hates and hurts. The nagging, gnawing emotional hurts we bottle up inside ourselves are like time bombs laid within. They explode in tumors, cancers, high blood pressure, hardening of the arteries, diabetes, heart trouble, lung trouble, literally riddle our bodies with poisonous thoughts that impregnate universal subconscious mind. We must surrender our fears and frustrations and guilts, lay aside our vanities and our little egos, place all our hurts on the shoulders of the Atlas of eternity. Then we shall be free to partake of the beauty and perfection and abundance of the universe. God is always right where we are, responding to us exactly as we conceive of Him. He is our infinite invisible dimension, of which our physical bodies are but a negligible projection. The power for physical perfection is running over inside of us. We need only surrender to it, accept it, trust ourselves completely to it, and health is ours. When you treat yourself or someone else for a physical ailment, remember that you are treating mind and not body. You are assuring yourself of mental and spiritual perfection. You are affirming it. You are projecting it into universal subconscious mind with complete faith and trust. When you treat someone else, you still deal with the same mind. You treat yourself to think perfection of the person you are treating. Do not try to change the other person's thinking by the power of your own thought. Simply treat yourself for your conception of him. You move universal subconscious mind. Universal subconscious mind moves him. Therefore, whether you are treating yourself or another, the treatment is always the same. Though, of course, in the latter case, you will substitute he or she where you would usually use I. But always you are treating yourself, your own conception, and projecting it into universal mind. When you heal another, you must first be able to completely accept in your own mind his spiritual perfection. When you have done that, the healing will be effected. The mental causes of disease. A partial list of common physical ills follows with underlying mental cause for each, so that you may be guided more easily into directing your treatments at mental conditions rather than physical. Headache. Confusion is the predominant condition attendant upon headache. Most generally, this is brought about by the suppression of some emotion which revolves around the affections. When headache is attended by dizzy spells, it is a sign of basic insecurity. Treat for peace. the clarity of subconscious, the love that pervades the universe, and the consciousness of immortal self. Fatigue. When enthusiasm and joy desert us, fatigue enmeshes us in its enervating grasp. Joy and enthusiasm are results of mental and spiritual expansion. We cease to expand when we place limits on our thinking and on our conceptions. Our goals disappear or seem unobtainable, and we accept defeat and its attendant feeling of lethargy and tiredness. Treat for awareness of life and movement and joy and expansion. There are no limitations on God, and God is expressing Himself through you. Indigestion. An intense sense of personal responsibility usually manifests itself in digestive upsets. People who work at high speeds and feel they must do everything by themselves often fall victim to excess stomach acidity and stomach ulcers. Their refusal to assimilate on the plane of mind, a unity with the underlying self, becomes symptomatic in the difficulty they have assimilating food. Treat for peace and perception of how God is the only doer. Treat for relaxation and trust in universal subconscious mind. Learn how to let go and leave it to God. There is perfect assimilation in perfect spirit. Constipation. Fear causes immobility, which brings inaction into life. Freezing and constricting, often manifesting itself in constipation. Fear is the basic cause of greed, acquisitive tendencies, unwillingness to let go. Very often fear comes from belief in limitations, in lack, in burden. It brings on excessive tensions, constricts and binds the muscles and the movements of the body. Fear is faith used negatively. Treat for positive thinking, assurance, confidence, the knowledge that you are one with God, and God is right where you are, guiding you unerringly to your goals. Banish negative thoughts. Whatever you refuse to accept in mind can never touch you in the physical world. Obesity. We become fat because we eat too much, and we eat too much because certain of our desires and longings are frustrated. Seeking solace, we find it in food, for the pleasure of taste and the comfort it gives us. Our frustrations are caused because we have taken unto ourselves false ideas of our personal unworthiness and no longer believe we can achieve our goals. We have lost confidence in our divine roots, and our energies are directed at sensual pleasures rather than at achievement and service. Treat for knowledge of the center of consciousness, wherein there is perfect order, perfect beauty, and perfect symmetry. Food is a symbol of love and should be eaten with moderation, lest gluttony turn love to greed. God is love, and the perfect seed of love lies within you. Insomnia. When we sleep, we become immersed in universal subconscious mind. If we cannot sleep, it is because we are over-concerned with the material world, and our conscious minds have overridden the subconscious and refuse to let go. The physical world is simply a series of manifested results which have all proceeded from subconscious mind. We cannot change these results by fighting them, but only by dealing with them in mind where they originate. Thus, holding on to your cares and worries is the worst possible way to overcome them. Seek your center of consciousness before going to bed. Treat for peace and relaxation. Real truth is of the spirit and lies inward. Turn your eyes away from the world and look within. Intemperance. Alcohol provides a torturous trap for those who seek escape from an unwanted belief. It is always some unwholesome or painful picture gnawing on the subconscious that turns a person to drink. He himself has created this image, and he might change it by creating another, but he lends reality to his self-made monster and flees it down the avenues of alcoholism or drug addiction or senseless pursuits of pleasure. Treat for the disillusion of guilt and personal responsibility. God is in you, and God is not guilty. Mistakes are for learning, and each day is a fresh start with a clean slate when you learn to forgive yourself. Colds and congestions. Mental conflicts and repressions attract congestions of the body, such as the common cold. Such conflicts are usually first evidenced by depression of the spirits, a bleakness in outlook. Our creative nature demands that we either make a decision on a problem or put it out of mind. When we hold a problem in mind, we are unable to come to a decision. We set up congestion in the forces that flow through us from the subconscious. This reduces our energy, and activity depresses the spirit, brings on bodily congestions and colds. Also, our racial conviction that colds are catching and caused by exposure to wind and low temperatures sets up creative impulses to manifest them when we encounter such situations. Treat for harmony in the knowledge of the perfection of universal subconscious mind. Each of your problems will be perfectly answered if you will only let go and leave the solution to your greater self. Treat for poise and assurance and calmness. There is no congestion in perfect spirit. False growths. A seed buried within grows in darkness, and so we carry our guilts around with us. They block us from knowledge of the great self, warp and distort our consciousness, manifest their falseness by false growths in and on the body. Treat for unity with universal subconscious mind. Let go of your guilts and sins and give them over to God. Paralysis. Ideas of restriction and limitation may manifest themselves in paralysis or the malfunctioning of the senses. There is no restriction and no inaction in the mind of God, which you may take unto yourself by meditation at the center of consciousness. Heart trouble and organic disturbances. The heart is the seat of purpose, and when purpose is centered in spirit and not in the material world, the heart is rooted in perfection. Organic disturbances always come from a man being out of tune with his spiritual nature. Heart trouble and attendant disorders visit our materialists, those who seek their goals, purposes, and pleasures in the physical world. Treat by meditation on the birthless, deathless, ageless spirit from which man springs. Take unto yourself the mantle of God. Become one with him, and his purpose will energize your heart. There is only one mind, one spirit, one power pervading the entire universe, and it is perfect. It is constantly attempting to express itself perfectly through each of us, because we are newly arrived at the consciousness of our own little egos, and we have not yet taken unto ourselves the consciousness of the greater self. We see neither from where we have come nor where we are going, and the gigantic universe seems to threaten and frustrate us on all sides. Our limited vision causes us to create fear and hate and bitterness and apathy, which manifest imperfections in our bodies. All disease and distortion of the body may be healed by meditation at the center of consciousness, by knowledge of the love of God, by awareness and use of the unlimited power and perfection of universal subconscious mind. Review. 1. Disease proceeds from mind and is the result of confusion. 2. Spirit is perfect, and body, which is the result of spirit, is perfect also, unless it is distorted by an idea of imperfect spirit. 3. Love is the eternal healer. 4. Body is idea implanted in universal subconscious mind. There are no imperfect bodies, only imperfect ideas. 5. From the wounds of the little ego arise the negative emotions which lay the foundation for disease. 6. Mental purpose is necessary to health, for such purpose coordinates the many interrelated functions of the body. 7. Exercise of itself will not produce health, which comes always from interest, desire, and aspiration in the mind and heart. 8. Overindulgence is a mark of imbalance of the emotions. 9. Pain is punishment for mistakes, is therefore a teacher, but the wise man learns by the mistakes of others. 10. Focus your attention on the world within, and let moderation attend you in all things. 11. Mental healing does not treat the body, but treats the mind. 12. All disease is treated by affirming the spiritual perfection in which we are rooted. 13. Since it is beyond our understanding to mentally set a broken bone or heal a ruptured appendix, we sensibly call a surgeon. 14. Mental healing is the use of a principle that is law. It is never ourselves who do the healing. We simply call upon the law of thoughts, becoming things by affirming the perfection of spirit. Body manifesting the spirit then becomes perfect also. 15. You heal another by treating your own mind for knowledge of his spiritual perfection. Thus you don't treat him, you treat yourself for your knowledge of him. 16. Behind every distortion of the body lies a distorted concept in mind. For from mind all things proceed. Contemplate perfect spirit. Health will follow. All barriers are those created by conscious mind, by limited thinking, by ingrained racial prejudice, by buried pain remembrances. Universal subconscious mind is unlimited in both scope and power. Peace and perfection await him who surrenders his ego to the immortal self that dwells within. Love is the great healer, for with love, the foundations of the universe are perceived. Recommended reading: The Art of Creation by Edward Carpenter. 10th meditation. My body is a manifestation of my knowledge of myself, and my true self is spirit, in consciousness only, and invisible. Other people see me not, they see but my body. It is only I who know myself, and this knowledge returns to me in my health and in the things of my life. Therefore I affirm that my spirit is perfect, that I am one with the great self of the universe. The energy of this great self permeates my being, cleanses me of all impurities of the flesh, restores every function of my body to harmony. There, in perfect elimination, perfect assimilation, my entire being is spiritual, and my body is quickened into new life with the perception of this great truth. I surrender myself to the wisdom and guidance of universal subconscious mind. I become one with the purpose of God, and this mighty purpose animates my body, projects into every aspect of my life. There is no obstruction, no barrier, no limitation in my mind. I see only peace, power, vigor, and plenty. I open my heart to love, and love flows through every atom and pore of my body, energizing, molding, coordinating. By healing my mind of limitation and lack and negative thinking, I automatically heal my body. At the center of my being, I perceive limitless, deathless, ageless spirit, perfect in beauty, perfect in function. This spirit becomes manifest in my body and in my affairs. When I am faced with apparent confusion, I surrender it. Give over each of my problems and worries to that which has the perfect solution and in which there is absolute clarity. I take my thoughts from the limitless reaches of universal subconscious mind, never from the world around me. I do not think responsively. I think originally. I do not react, I act. I am never a victim of circumstances, for each thing in my life proceeds from out of my thoughts, which move always in accord with God. Thus concludes The Secrets of Great Health by US Andersen, from 3 Magic Words. It's a simple idea. You've heard it a million times before. Understanding how to heal is within yourself. We recently read the book, How to Use Your Healing Power by Joseph Murphy, and everything that he talks about in that is also talked about here. The repetition is a good thing. I know you might have heard it, and I know you might understand it, but you need to get this into your subconscious mind. Whatever it is that you're suffering or going through, there is a spiritual cause. You must find that spiritual cause. If it's a headache, fatigue, obesity, there is a spiritual cause behind it. And most importantly, there is nothing that's incurable. Yes, up to this point, nobody has mentally healed a broken bone. But it doesn't mean it's not possible. We have not reached the level of consciousness in order to heal that broken bone. But I promise you there will be a time in the future when we do. Many of the diseases and health problems that we suffer from is because of our little ego, stuck in this little world of materiality. And when we do, spirit suddenly becomes unperfect. Things become confusing. Things become limited. So when we remove that little ego and enter into the larger, what US Andersen refers to as the universal subconscious mind, that's where the healing occurs. Your body is an idea in the universal subconscious mind, and it is perfect. Everything about it is perfect. And you are perfect. Absolutely perfect. And spirit is perfect, and spirit is what is running through you, and that is the key element in your healing. You can rely on the law for you to heal. And the healing comes from love. Love is the eternal healer. It is healing you. And if you ever have healed in the past, it was from love flowing through you. If you experience pain, it is not a punishment. You're not suffering from something you did in the past. It's a teacher. It's a teacher that helps us learn from our mistakes. Focus your attention on the world within if you want to heal. He also emphasizes moderation. It helps in all things, as my dad taught me. If you want a taste of that cinnamon roll, go ahead. All things in moderation. Because acting out of moderation acts out of the flow and harmony of the universal subconscious mind. So if you're suffering from something right now, behind that suffering or that health problem is a distortion. At the beginning, it might seem to be difficult. And the thing that you're addressing, the distortion that you're addressing in your body, in your mind, it might be a big issue that you're not aware of. I had a friend that was recently told that they had stage 4 cancer. When I talked to them a little bit, they were stuck in a situation that they couldn't get out of. It was a terrible relationship they didn't want to be in. And they've tried their best, and they had not come to grips with it. And that frustration had come through their body. So once they started really addressing not only the physical imbalance in their body, but this distortion in their life, and they felt some freedom and they addressed it, they started getting better. And there are thousands, if not millions of stories of people on their deathbed addressing distortions in their mind and finding healings within. And it can happen instantaneously. Jesus healed people instantaneously, and it can happen instantaneously for you. And I want you to be healed. Please put in the comments if you're suffering from some sort of ailment or illness or disease. And I ask everybody that's listening to go into the comments. This is an opportunity for you to be of service, just sitting right there on your phone or on your computer. And if you see somebody that's suffering, see that person within yourself and affirm that they are healed. Use the techniques that we've discussed here by US Andersen, the same techniques discussed by Joseph Murphy. We are all amazing healers, and when we do this together, we are unstoppable. So if you're suffering, I want you to try to do these things within and try to find those imbalances and those distortions. But tell me about it. And I'm going to do my best to see you as healed within myself. I'm going to see the spiritual perfection in you through me. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. I'm sending love and light to everybody that's listening, imagining perfect bliss and joy and happiness. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.